Hello, technical writing students. I hope you're well. Today I want to give you some ideas how to make your resume and cover letter as good as it can be. The more I look at this, the more I'm wondering why I'm giving you 50 points for each of these, but it should work in your favor, huh? Anyway, we're going to, if you don't have your resume and your letter where you can look at it, get it, and there's also a checklist that is now on the screen. If you don't have that where you can see it, you might want to get that as well. Because what I'll be doing is going down the checklist very quickly, most of the items. This checklist will really help you. If you go through, I'm not saying it all has to be there, but you should consider all these things for sure. There's some good advice here. And I want to take you through it. First of all, the cover letter, also called a letter of application. You want the checklist guides you down. You need to have it look like this. It is a business letter and has a business letter format. It is in block paragraph form. It used to be a modified block was preferred. And now I've noticed all the materials I receive have it in block. In the old days, this address used to be about halfway over, and then the closure here would be about halfway over. Now it's all hard to the left, which just makes sense. But note, it's all hard to the left. Paragraphing in business letters, it should be single spaced. You're writing. We tell paragraphs because there's a space there. Consequently, do not indent the paragraphs. That will just show that you don't know things. They won't hire you because you're gauche. And I'll have to give you less of a grade too. Make sure you have it this way though. It's your address. At the top, there's the date here. And then you have the person you're writing to. For the sake of our drill here, some of you may not have a name. Often you can put a position there, like executive chef. You may not have that person's name, but we need the complete address, where it is, etc. It is okay to use the official post office abbreviations. Please note this, it's on the checklist, and I frequently see it wrong. The dear chef, dear executive chef, dear Ms., Mr., Doctor, whoever it is, you put their name here, and there's a colon. Note that is a colon, 2 dots. Do not put a comma. That is a personal letter. Then there are jobs to do. As you go down the list on the checklist, you will note them. In the first, and they have to actually give you a formula, or I've actually given you a formula on the checklist, and it's not a bad formula. I'm not saying that this is the only way you can do it, but it works. In an introduction, there are jobs you should do. In the introduction, you want to include the specific position that you want. You should discuss how you came to know of the position. They will want to know that. And it's kind of like any introduction. This is your introduction. You have a body and a conclusion. In the introduction, you can see it even as a thesis statement down here. The last sentence, you should make a statement about yourself and your desirability. Now, again, you can go through and look at the models, etc., but don't plagiarize them, okay? You do some original work. Don't just use the same phrases. And then the second paragraph is wise to discuss your educational experience. Now, you're not just echoing or mimicking what's on your resume. This is a chance for you to actually highlight some things. Do not belabor it. Don't go on and on. This should be a page. It doesn't go on long. In fact, this will not get read probably until after they've read your resume. And by the way, it's good to have a copy of this because it gives you something you can cut and paste when you're sending online resumes. Sometimes, in fact, sometimes they'll have a place for you to include a cover letter. But sometimes it's just an email, and you can cut and paste this. Don't mess up your opportunity by dashing out a quick email that makes it seem like you're illiterate. But here you want to discuss your academics, and in the next paragraph, you want to discuss your work experience. Now, this is a perfect place for you to make a link between what you are doing, which may not be as directly relevant as is obvious to what you want to do. All of us have, when we're younger, a host of jobs that we're glad we don't have later. And this is a perfect place. The first time I applied for a position as a teacher, I mentioned my previous work experience in sales and claims adjusting, and I emphasized that in those positions I had to deal with people. I had to actually do some teaching. So they could see that what I was doing had some relevance. By the way, any work you've done and been paid for, you have a story to tell. There is an integrity to actually doing a job, being faithful, showing up, and getting paid for something. And don't degrade yourself or down yourself. You have something to say there. Then finally, your letter should end with these helpful ideas here, where at the end you want to request the next step in the interview. You want to mention your resume. You want to give the phone number and your email. And I like this closure. There are others you can use, but sincerely is good. After you hit sincerely, comma, space it 4 times so that there's a space there. You should write your name in the real world. And then enclosure. The enclosure is your resume. In business letters, often you send something other than just the letter. Those would be the enclosures. And sometimes you just enclosure, if there's one, is fine. That's all you need to put. I have in the past sent multiple documents when I did other work. And sometimes I'd have enclosures, plural, colon, and a whole list that would go down. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just adding that. Now, a major mistake that happens, I will be looking at grammar, mechanics, and spelling, but a major mistake is on the checklist, is for you to, and I would do this, it works well with a hard copy. You can do it, of course, on the screen if that's the way you want to do it, but circle all the I's that you use at some point before you turn this in. And make sure you do not have repetitious, juvenile-sounding sentences. You are writing in first person. That's totally okay. But you don't want to have sentence after sentence starting with I. And that is a common error. I, blah, 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 I, blah, blah. It makes it sound like you're a 5th grader. The record for most I's, by the way, is one particular letter I received had 9 consecutive sentences, 9 in a row, all beginning with I. Again, just in writing in general, the guidelines I gave you, the way that teachers have evaluated you for years, they're looking at syntax. You should have varied, consistently varied and appropriate sentences, not redundant, the same sort of sentence over and over. It makes you sound less than intelligent. So that's the letter. The resumes, I'm probably going to have to do in 2 parts because I'm being timed here, but hopefully we can get through the bulk of it. The resume is a different beast. The resume, and here's an example. These are 2 resumes that you can get online under the learning materials. That would be fine. Notice they're 1 page. Yours should probably be 1 page. A feature they both have is they have space. Now, you want your document to have space on it. I don't care what format you use. I would recommend probably not using the templates in Word or whatever you're using, because they tend to limit you. Everything you need to do, you can do with just using a Word program. Now, there are consistent matters that you should have, whatever exact format you use. It should pretty much follow certain principles. You're going to have your name. It should be prominent. And by the way, everything you need to do, you can do simply with spacing. And don't bounce around. Use the same typeface for everything, but you can make certain items larger or smaller. The name can be larger. 12-point font's kind of standard. If you need to go down as low as 11, maybe 10, depends on whom you ask, you could do that. Don't make it tiny. And don't make it look like an eye chart either. You do need to inhabit the space. Any good resume that you're going to produce should have the accessibility feature. The idea behind that is, let's look at this other one. I actually prefer this other format. This one has objective, education, honors, all this out to the left. I personally, it's fine, and it might be something you could do if you haven't got as much to say. You can do it this way because it does eat up some space and still look neat. I've always kind of preferred more this way, where you have headings so that you can see the sections. And as long as you're consistent, most things will work. And there are other samples you can look at, not only on the job hunt folder here on D2L, but you certainly go out and look at some that you might find elsewhere on the web. There's a lot of good materials, but you need to do this thing. Now, as we're going down, I'm going to stay on this one. The checklist guides you through this. You want to make sure your document inhabits the page well. And what I mean by that, it should fill the space, but not crowd the space. Any resume that you write should be able, the hard copy you should be able to take it, throw it on the floor, stand over it, and look down and see distinct sections. It shouldn't fuse together. Here you can see this would be kind of the kind of view you would have from 6-ish feet above. Notice we can see their sections. You want to have it like that. Now, you don't want to have too much white space, because white space, again, in the last one I mentioned, is nothing, and you use nothing to accentuate what's there. And if you have a lot of white space, you're basically saying, my life is nothing. And we know that's not true. So as you're going through the checklist, I am asking you to put objective here. Now, objective, different people say different things about that. Some people say you don't need an objective. I want you to have an objective, and it should point to you, the job. It doesn't have to be as specific as this. What you don't want is a lame objective. There's never a need for that. You don't have something, a position that allows me to use my talents or something like that. Education, you need to have the complete university's name and where it's located. On the resume, there are no full addresses, not for where you worked, not for your schools, but we need to know city, state, country, if that's appropriate in your case. There are different options, but you want to go through related coursework, certainly put that. There's a mention of GPA. On the checklist, it states if it's more than 3.0 to list it. Maybe. Definitely if it's under 3.0, don't list it. A 3.0 is maybe something you don't even want to draw attention to. I've heard different people give different levels, 3.25s, 3.3s. If it's under 3, don't ask. But you can list coursework. Pick the coursework that fits the job. I have had several resumes, and this resume, this section for my jobs in business was different than the ones I had when I was looking for a teaching job. Honors and awards, do that if you have them. You list your work, you can list skills, there are other options. I'm going to mention this because you need to know it. The checklist will work. In your work experience especially, you could even have some of these points in your education if you want to amplify that, which you may. That might be more relevant. You want to not just list where you were, but what you did. And here, I'll ask you to write something not using the pronoun I. Never use I in a resume. That is totally incorrect. But these are all sentences that are active problem solver sentences that describe what the person did. You could put an I in front of all these, and now you suddenly have a full, complete sentence. The implied subject for each one is I. I answer all calls. I aid. Notice this is the current job this person has. It's present tense. Everything else is past tense because it's history. Make sure you give attention to that. The checklist should help you, and I am running out of time, so I'm not going to belabor it. The checklist should be something useful. You can email me with questions. You know that. And I want to encourage you, the full schedule is up. I think you may know that if you've been following the videos, and it shows exactly what we're doing when. All the resources are posted. The videos will be up soon. So continue with your research and be well, stay out of trouble, be safe, and we'll catch you the next time around.